And it's like some folks are still joining, but it is a little after 10, so we'll go ahead and get started with technical advisory group meeting for the Fauntleroy Ferry Terminal Replacement Project. My name is Laura Lebesner Miller. I will be helping facilitate today's meeting once again. We do have, looks like a lighter turnout so far. I know we sent out the meeting hold a bit later than usual, so we will definitely be sending around the recording for anyone who's unable to join us. Since there are just a few of us, if you'd like to just drop into the chat your name and the organization you're representing as a reminder for the group. We encourage everyone to email comments anytime to our project email, and Sophie will drop that into the chat. These meetings are open to the public. Looks like we just have one community participant so far, and you may be joining us throughout the meeting. Call out here, we have Jessica Olmsted from ENR, Laura Arbor from WDFW, Shanti Colwell from Seattle Public Utilities, Penny Kelly with Ecology, David Porch from King County, Terry Fetter from King County Metro Marine Division. Let's see a few others joining, Aaron Halbert, Jacob Brett. Then I will go ahead and just cover our agenda slide here. So we have just a quick follow-up on the Good to Go study. We're going to spend most of our time today talking about the approach to construction, and then we'll hear some updates on what's going on with the intersection and real estate. With that, I will turn it back over to Hadley to cover our timeline.
Okay, thanks, Laura. So many of you have seen this timeline before, but just as a reminder, we're nearing the end of the Pell Planning and Environmental Linkages study phase of this project that's been going on since 2021. We're going to be doing the level 3 screening in the next month to screen the range of alternatives that we have. And then we'll be writing the Pell study report and sending that to FHWA for their approval in early 2025. So we're kind of nearing the end of this phase that you've all been working with us on for the last several years, and with the goal of narrowing the range of alternatives to a single alternative to carry forward into the NEPA-SEPA review. So the next slide shows kind of where we've been in this process. We started with a very wide range of alternatives during level 1 screening. Basically everything was on the table, including moving the terminal to a different location outside of West Seattle. Then we narrowed the range to even further to different dock sizes, till we came up with 2 basic concepts, which was a larger dock or a dock that is the similar or same size as the dock that's there today. All of those concepts hold 186 cars, either a combination of on dock holding or holding queuing up along Fauntleroy Way Southwest as it does today. And the 186 cars is important because it's a vessel and a half, which is what our terminal design manual says, to be able to fill 124 car ferry, which is the size of the ferry that operates this route. So now we have these alternatives that we're going to do a finer level of screening on with more specific factors to narrow down the alternatives we have to a single alternative to advance. And then this shows the topics we've all discussed with both the technical advisory group, all of you, and the community advisory group, which is a group of 24 members of the public and the community representing all 3 Triangle Route communities. And we're at the point where we've been sharing over the last several months information about some of the key factors that will go into selecting an alternative. So environmental, traffic. We did a study on different ticketing approaches to try to improve operational efficiency and move cars through the toll booth faster. And then today we're going to be sharing information on the construction phasing and construction approach, how we're going to construct a new terminal in such a constrained site, And our next meeting will focus on the results of that level 3 screening process and some discussion of cost and cost estimates. And then we'll be moving into drafting the Pell study report and getting input from all of you on that final Pell study before we move into the next phase of design and environmental review. So with that, are there any questions on the process or where we're at with the project? Okay, back to you, Laura. We're actually over to Dave, I think.
Yeah, no, I'll take it from here, Hadley. Thank you. And thanks everybody again for being here. Appreciate you taking some time out of your day to join us in the discussion of Fauntleroy trestle replacement. Before I get to the main topic of today's meeting, which is really about our construction approach and some screening of that, I wanted to just spend 60 seconds here on the good to go work that we presented on at our last meeting. We appreciate everybody's comments, and we've essentially finalized that study. In summary, we found that, and for those that aren't following Good to Go, the Good to Go is a tool that our tolling division at Washington State DOT uses to toll 405 and Highway 99, Tacoma Narrows Bridge. And so we were looking at ways to consider looking at Good to Go on this route. And then advanced ticketing is another element that we actually have in place already, but looking at advanced ticketing on a more full scale for this route. What we learned is that there's really a very small improvement using Good to Go. Doesn't mean that we couldn't apply it to this terminal, and I think we're going to carry it forward in alternatives A2 and A3. But the real time savings, the ability to move cars through this terminal much faster will not be realized with Good to Go. So that's the kind of the conclusion in that study. And I just wanted to mention it. If there are any questions, we can talk about that now, or we can kind of follow up at the end of this meeting on the Good to Go study. So what I really want to get into today, and I've got Ed Thomas helping me talk about construction or construction approach and construction phasing. I really want to talk about that next. And so as part of this planning process, it's very important for us to consider how we're going to construct the project. As you are all aware, we have a very tight window here, geometrically, to build the terminal and all of the pieces that fit into it. We have a goal to provide ferry service during construction. WSF is committed to maintaining, some level of service during construction, and we were going to be exploring the service level options over the coming months. Obviously, it's very important that we continue to provide service to the Triangle route and the folks that live on Vashon and in Southworth. So that's a very important factor for us to consider. We have environmental and regulatory requirements, and those are working with many of you on this call, the tribes as well. What design features and construction features need to be in place in order to successfully build the project. We have a lot of site constraints. As you can see, as you're well aware with the terminal, it's a very tight footprint, unlike Coleman Dock or Anacortes or Bainbridge, where we have large holding area and access to a state route. We have a very limited space to work within. We about the city right away that we also have to be cognizant of. So that's another constraint that we're going to be factoring in. The construction delivery method, we're going to talk about that in a minute. That's also very important for us to consider, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And then finally, permit requirements. Permit requirements, this is sort of as we go into construction, are the requirements around noise, are the requirements around access and space, temporary right-of-way needs or temporary needs out over the water. So those are things that we're going to also have to factor in to this. We do understand that it's disruptive. Construction is never easy, whether you're remodeling a kitchen or a bathroom in your house or you're reconstructing a ferry terminal. It is very disruptive. there's a lot that goes on, and we're going to do the best we can to plan and minimize the impacts on the neighbors and all of the ferry riders, so that there's really no surprises. And of course, that effort's underway now and will continue through the NEPA-SEPA process. So on the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about the screening criteria that we're using to evaluate the alternatives. And the next step of this Pell process is really to dive into the screening, and our goal is to develop an alternative that we want to take into the NEPA process by the end of the year. A couple of things I just want to highlight here on the criteria. One of the criteria is the ability to avoid changes to the park and recreation areas. This includes both the Coast Park adjacent to the terminal, as well as the Captain's Park, which is across the street from the dock. We want to be in complete alignment with the project schedule. Each of the alternatives that we have proposed involve a very extended multi-year construction season. It definitely is a factor in how we select an alternative. Ed will talk about that in a minute. The project feasibility, this is, I mentioned a second ago, pertains to both temporary and permanent right-of-way that we'll need to acquire both onshore and over the water. That's very important for us to consider as we screen these alternatives. And then finally, obviously, without an adequate amount of budget to build the project, we can't achieve all that we want. So project cost is an important piece for us to screen. And we're going to talk about that in our next meeting when we meet with all of you. So let's go to the next slide. So one of the most important things that the community's been telling us, and is very important to our planning effort, is just the level of service we can provide during construction. As I mentioned, this is a very tight space in which to work. We have several lanes of holding. We have several lanes of egress on and off the boat. We don't have a lot of extra space, unlike Coleman Dock, for example, where we have, 20 some lanes for holding. We have 4 lanes for holding, and it's very difficult to construct a project when we have such a limited amount of space. We are looking at, and likely we'll have to build a temporary slip off to the right in this picture. Ed will talk about that in a minute, to help maintain service while we reconstruct the existing slip. We should plan for some impacts to the customers, and that'll be part of this. We'll be communicating that throughout the design and then in the construction to make sure folks understand what those impacts will be. That will affect the holding on the dock. It'll affect Fauntleroy Way for sure. And so those are some things that we'll talk about here in a minute. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ed Thomas, who is going to walk you through the sequencing of the various options and how we will actually replace the terminal, regardless of the alternative. There's a variety of ways to do this, but we're going to talk about that next. So Ed, you want to take it away?
Yeah. Thanks, Dave. So as Dave mentioned, as part of this Pell study, we've started thinking about how to phase construction. We've developed a conceptual sequence, and with the next few slides, I'd like to explain each of these phases. So with phase 1, the ferry service operates from the south half of the existing trestle, utilizing the existing slip. That's indicated here in this dark cyan shading, with the construction activity highlighted as an orange hatching. And for the first 18 to 21 months, the contractor will build new tow booths, realign the exit lanes, and then build the north half of the new dock and a new temporary dock with a temporary slip there off to the west-northwest off the end of the existing, or the end of the dock. I'd also like to note that we're still working on determining a suitable construction staging area for the contractor, as well as a suitable area for construction offices. Okay, moving on to phase 2A. The ferry service will transfer back up to the north half of the new dock and operate out of the temporary slip. And over the next 15 to 18 months, approximately, the contractor will demolish the remaining elements of the existing facility, south half of the existing dock, the existing terminal building, and the existing slip, and then construct the new south half of dock, new terminal building, and new slip. So moving on to the next phase, 2B, ferry service transfers back down to the south, operating off of the new south half of the dock and new slip. And it'll be approximately about a month for the contractor to reconfigure that north half of the dock from its temporary configuration to its more permanent configuration. And then with that, at the end of 2B, we go into phase 3, in which the project is essentially complete and full service would resume out of the facility. And then over the next approximate 3 months, the contractor will remove all of the temporary dock and slip components. Then with that, we'd like to open it up for questions about this sequencing.
Thanks, Ed. And I'll just pause to see if there's any questions about any of the construction sequence or anything that Dave covered.
This is Penny. So I wanted to know if this construction sequence would, like, this doesn't mean have you chosen your alternative then? Or does this work with any alternative, I guess?
We have not chosen an alternative, and this construction sequencing would essentially apply to any alternative. The slides, I think, represent an approximation of the A series alternatives, and the longer alternatives would have a little bit more sequencing involved because of the nature of the longer dock.
Okay.
I see Rod, Malcolm, I see you have your hand up as well. Would you like to jump in?
Yes, especially since now I know my name is Rod instead of Andrew. I figured out how to change my name. 2 points. The construction sequencing slide greatly was very helpful in assisting me understand the potential overwater coverage of the temporary feature. And that is something that most likely will impact the tribe's treaty right to fish in the area. And a knockdown effect of the temporary slip for the ferries is that the ferry is going to deviate from its existing route for a short distance. So it'd be helpful to the tribe to know close to the Fauntleroy terminal where the new route will be. The ferry will have to take before it gets back onto its traditional route. Thank you.
Ed, would you like to address that question about?
Yeah, I think that once we get through the screening process and we have an alternative selected that we carry into the NEPA-SEPA phase, we will further evaluate and we'll have more detailed construction sequencing based on that specific alternative. And we will be able to better evaluate and define that temporary route change.
Yeah, understood. I just wanted to get it out early so it's not overlooked. So
Great. Thank you so much, Rod. Laura, see your hand is raised.
Yeah, hi. I was just kind of thoughtful about all of the temporary structures that will be necessary to construct the permanent facility and the time that those structures would be in place and the potential temporary impacts to habitat associated with having those in place. Typically anything that's in place longer than 6 months is looking at mitigation for shade impacts from that structure. So I will just be very curious to know how that is being looked at and considered, or if it's been considered, and how compensatory mitigation is being thought through on that as well.
No, Marcia is, our environmental lead is out this week. I don't know, Hadley or Dave, if there's anything you'd like to add about how the environmental screening criteria might come into play when we were thinking about these temporary structures.
Yeah, well, just to get to the duration question, Laura, we do anticipate that the project will take many years, multiple years to construct. So the temporary structure be one of the first things that goes in, and it will be one of the last things that comes out. So it certainly will exceed the 6-month rule that you mentioned, and we fully are aware that we will have to do mitigation for that. I think what Ed was getting at was that because it's temporary in nature, it isn't part of the permanent project. We don't need to permanently permit it, and we will use different design standards and because it's a temporary structure versus the permanent trestle. Hope that helps.
For raising that important point.
Okay, thank you.
For hands raised right now, we do have a few more points where we will pause for conversation, so we can, I think, go ahead and move on. Aaron, I see your hand is up. Would you like to jump in?
Yeah, sorry about that. I was just wondering, these potential construction impacts, like I think I heard that, WSF, you'll aim to maintain essential ferry service during the construction phase. Is there going to be an update to that service contingency plan, which factors this construction plan in, or is this kind of separate from that?
Adley, do you want to kind of address the work that's going on now, and then I can follow up with this question?
Sure. So we're working on updating the sailing schedule in the short term. And because, as we all know, we've been on this 2-boat emergency schedule for a while on the route, and then we're going to move into, with the same team, being ready to develop sailing schedules to have in place at various phases through construction, like where Ed was showing. Different slips will be available, different levels of service will be possible, and working to have sort of construction schedules that will probably vary throughout service. Does that answer, Aaron?
Yeah, I think so. Really just wanted to be aware of what those changes will look like, but it certainly seems like lots of error still.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to certainly be something that's going to be the most visible part of the project in terms of the community impacts and working with the communities on, and our FACs in particular, on any service changes throughout the several years of construction, and then making sure that we're maintaining essential connectivity to Vashon. So it's kind of a separate but parallel integrated process with this project.
Great.
See someone else with their hand raised. Go ahead and jump on in.
Good morning. This is Terry Federer here with King County Metro. I was just curious if this is one of my first meetings being involved with this group. And the question I have is, with the temporary infrastructure that's going into place, is there any consideration with that infrastructure for perhaps temporary, like a POF dock structure there as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks, and welcome to the technical advisory group, Terry. Dave, would you like to speak to that one, or Hadley? I see you're still off of mute, so question is around any temporary passenger-only ferry service during construction.
Dave, why don't you start, and I'll.
Yeah. First of all, thanks, Terry, for joining us. I appreciate all the work you guys do and keeping the passenger-only system working out of Vashon. Again, it's early to sort of answer that question. We certainly will consider passenger-only ferry service as an option. Probably would look similar to what we do at Southworth, if that would be possible, doing a bow loading type operation. But our goal is to continue to move emergency vehicles and freight and as many customers as we can through the system. So it's going to be the second slip, or this temporary slip, as we'll call it, is going to be a vehicle slip. But I certainly love the idea of being able to move, use your system or Kitsap system to help us out in a pinch to move pedestrians. So something we'll be exploring as we get into the next phase of the planning and design process.
Yeah, and Terry, I'll add that this is something we've received a lot of public comments on or interest already, asking exactly the question you asked, and people already pointing out, what about some sort of supplemental passenger only service between Fauntleroy and Vashon and Southworth or Southworth. So I think it's going to be part of the conversation and how we would do that in coordination with you all.
Great. Thank you for the answer. And I apologize, I am going to have to jump off, but I've got a short meeting. I'll probably pop back on a few hours or all session here. So I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for joining.
Yeah. Any other hands up at the moment? So I think we can go ahead and to the next slide. Great. That's going to tell us a little bit more about boat park during construction.
Yeah. Thanks, Laura. So during construction, and primarily construction of the dock, there will be an approximate 15-foot wide clear zone on both the north and south side of the dock. And this clear zone will provide a buffer from the construction activities and provide beach access for crews to get under the dock and perform work as needed. On this slide, we've identified an approximate clear zone representation there, yellow shaded area, to help you better visualize it. Then we can stand next slide. Okay, construction duration. So in the table on this slide, you can see that the estimated construction duration ranges from 33 to approximately 48 months, depending upon alternative. Alternatives A, A1, A2, and A3 have an estimated duration of 33 to 39 months. Alternatives B and B1 have an estimated duration of approximately 40 to 46 months. And alternatives B2, B3, and C have an estimated duration of approximately 42 to 48 months. These construction durations are based on major construction activities from the contractor's start of actual work through completion. These durations do not include internal construction contract requirements for WSF, and include their advertising, award, and execution period, and their internal closeout period. And I think with that, I hand it back to Dave to talk about construction delivery method.
Okay, that's fine. One of the questions that we have asked ourselves in terms of the kind of dovetails into the presentation that Ed gave on phasing is just the construction delivery method. WashDOT has a long history of embracing alternative delivery methods and has done a lot of design build projects as well as design bid build projects. We're diving into a delivery method called progressive design build on our fish passage projects, and we recently finished up the Coleman Dock project using a process called GCCM or CMGC, depending on where you are from. So we went through a process to evaluate the delivery method and settled on the most appropriate approach would be to use the design build method. There's a number of reasons for that. For those that don't know it, let me just explain for those that don't know what design build is. Essentially, it means that we have a single contract with a design build team. It involves a contractor, it involves their designer of record, and there we have the slide, and all of their both design and construction subcontractors. And under this single contract, the contracting entity will both do the design as well as the construction of the work. And the state's role is to develop a request for proposals, a request for qualifications, from which which includes specifications which those design builder bids on. One of the reasons that we like design build at the state is it centers around risk allocation. And it means, what that means is allowing the entity best suited to manage risk being the owner of that risk. And so on a complex project like this, one of the advantages of going design build is the design build contractor is responsible for all engineering, all constructability evaluations, all errors and omissions, both in the design and in quantities. It allows the state to provide oversight, but not to own those decisions. And it puts the entity most capable of the constructability side of this thing in charge and come up with a way to sequence the project. So while Ed's done this great job of coming up with this phasing, a design builder come on board and could look at this in a little different way and may juggle how the dock is managed while it's being constructed. So that's an opportunity for us. And then one of the big reasons that the agency has embraced design build is the fact that it allows us to move faster in terms of delivering a product that in this case the ridership can use sooner than later. For example, elements that have been designed for like the piling could proceed with construction, while the superstructure and other architectural elements or the toll booths can be designed and constructed later. It allows us to get in the water sooner in the process, and the goal being that we deliver the project faster. We are, in this second bullet, we are committed to engaging the community through the design build process. We've done that in all the design build projects that the state's been doing for the last 25 years. That applies to both design build and design bid build. And we can be prescriptive in our specifications on what sort of aesthetics, context sensitive features that we want to have based on input from the community and the neighborhood. So that's certainly something that we do not take lightly, and we'll make sure that whatever we propose will have an aesthetic that works with the neighborhood. So that's what I had for this slide. Any questions on the design build decision? Okay, I'm not seeing a show of hands.
I see
My
Penny's
hand is
name.
up. My hand is up.
Oh, okay.
And then Charlie, I don't know if you were going to say something because we started to speak at the same time.
No.
Okay.
Go ahead, Penny.
I have several, but if someone else raises their hand, let me know. I'll lower since you can't see it anyway. Probably all the fun technical difficulties coming up. Maybe it's because I changed my name. And you really need me to be Andrew. I was wondering about the several. So for the design build, so how does that really affect your assessment of like things like the duration and things like that, where you don't have the contractor on board yet? Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure. There's some, Penny, and I'll sort of speak to your background and what you represent here. Certainly there are going to be things that we need to be prescriptive on, whether it's the type of material used or the number of piling that would be allowed to be installed in the water for the temporary structures, the duration of the project. Ed Thomas and his team will be doing some preliminary engineering to sort of frame and provide sort of some bookends to what the work will require. And then we will be prescriptive in the design build contract. Thou shalt finish the project in, say, 4 years, 48 months. We'll have requirements in there that we want to be very prescriptive on. Back to the aesthetic, if we want the final structure to be gray with purple polka dots, we want it to be huskies are on one side and cougars on the other. We can be very prescriptive in what we do, but what we do in design build is allow all those other things that give the contractor some ability to manage his own or her own work, and phasing, we give that to the contractor. So we will not sell short the importance of making sure that we have a base configuration, but we do allow for that creativity. Does that help answer your question?
I think so, but I was kind of wondering about like then the sequences that you guys were showing us to just try and help us understand, how it might go, because that to me definitely seems like where the design builder would have the flexibility to come in and decide to do it different. But I was wondering too about that location of the temporary dock extending out that certain direction. Would that be something you guys would prescribe? Because of
I
the
think so.
limited
I think so, because I assume that the environmental regulators would want us to establish that. I assume that Ed's looked at this and there's a preferred, whether it's the bathymetry on that side or the currents, or talking to the captains, that coming off that side of the dock is advantageous over the south side of the dock. So we would be prescriptive in that. What we would not be prescriptive would be the step 1, step 2, step 3. It might be they start with step 2 first, and then they go to step 3, and then they come back to step 1. But we would be prescriptive, for example, on how much overwater coverage they would be allowed. And again, that would be based on both your input, but as well, what minimum level of service do we need to provide? And that gets back to kind of what Terry was asking, like, well, what other types of service could you provide? So those are all good things that will be part of our development of the request for proposals phase, and what elements we need to be real prescriptive on, and where can we give the contractor the ability to innovate.
Okay. I still have more, but just, I don't know if anyone else is raising their hand since I can't see them. No? Okay. That 15-foot clear zone, is that open to adjustment? Because it seems like there's keeping people out of the construction zone, but is that going to be an area on the beach where the contractor could literally put some equipment to do stuff near the shore? In which case you have like stuff that's really big and tall, and there's falls and all this other stuff. So I just wondered, because that can also be an impact. So I didn't know if that was an adjustable zone that you anticipate might have to be adjusted depending on what comes in with it, particularly design build. So
Ed, do you want to speak to the development of that clear zone and what you guys were thinking on that?
Yeah, that the dimension stated right now is not set, right? That zone has the ability to be adjusted, and there are going to be limitations within it, and there will also be limitations on what the contractor would be allowed and not allowed to do within that nearshore area.
Okay. Cool. That's kind of what I was thinking, wondering about. My final question, which I don't know if this will make sense or not, but those durations between the different alternatives, it probably won't make sense to ask this, but I'm trying to think if like your temporary impacts are, because I'm used to like ferry projects or any of the projects having certain components that have nothing to do with the stuff that I regulate, and so like with Coleman Dock, they had a lot of stuff that they built that I just didn't have anything to do with, like the structures, like your polka dots or whatever you're referencing kind of thing, which by the way, I think that would be totally awesome if you guys would do something really fun like that. But I was wondering if you would be able to incentivize the RFP for a design builder, or like when you're actually assessing these durations for some of the alternatives, if it just automatically means that the temporary impacts over water coverage and all of that just goes up, or if some of the components within a project that have nothing to do with being in the water. I don't know if that question actually really makes sense. I'm struggling to phrase it well, but I wasn't sure if that just is an automatic, it takes longer, so we'll be in the water longer. I don't, again, does this make sense to you guys? Because there's things you
Well,
do.
yeah, it does. I picked up on the word incentive, and I'll kind of reframe that. The design build procurement will involve very prescriptive things that the contractor needs to do, but it will also, it's also a best value procurement, which means it's not necessarily based on the lowest price, but it includes a technical score. And in that technical score, we can provide the contractor essentially an incentive to, if they can complete the project faster, they would get more points. And those points then could be used in concert with the price to create a best value. So what we've seen on project I did several years ago, where we had a criteria for scheduled delivery, because the sooner we get it opened up, the sooner the public gets to use it. The two contractors bid completely different schedules. One was slow and methodical, and the other one was trying to build elements, two different bridges simultaneously. They won the contract because they had, while they had a higher dollar value than the lower bid, they won points on the, they were incentivized to finish the project faster, and we gave them points, and they won the contract as a result. So that will be definitely something we're thinking about already, is to make sure that the contractors understand the importance of getting in and getting out quickly. And if they can shorten the duration from 4 years to 3 years, we would give them credit for that. Again, they still have to work within the windows available to us. We're certainly going to have noise requirements. They probably will not be able to work 24 hours a day. So they'll still have to work within whatever is permitted, but there's some opportunity for them to come up with this an innovative way to deliver the project faster, and they'll be rewarded for that in the scoring.
Okay.
Yeah, good question. Ed, anything else you want to add on that? Ed Thomas?
No, Dave, I think you covered that rather well.
Okay. Okay.
That was all my questions right now.
All right. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Benny. I think we just have a couple more slides, and I see Charlie is on screen to tell us what's going on with real estate.
Okay, here's my real estate update. We're working to acquire a parcel just north of the terminal. Immediately north is the King County sewage lift station, and just on the other side of that's the small white house. So we're working to acquire that. It's currently owned by King County. We completed the environmental assessment and appraisal of that property last month in September. And now WashDOT's Real Estate Services is negotiating the property acquisition with King County. The team has already contacted the tenants and provided them with relocation options. And what else? I guess the Ferries, we plan to use the house for storage space and a break room for terminal staff until the intersection project, which I'm going to talk about in a second, begins. We're estimating the fall of 2025. So just storage space, break room for the near term, and then we'll use it for construction administration when we begin construction of the intersection. And here's our intersection. Intersection update. We want to share a little bit with you. We're currently coordinating with SDOT and King County Metro, and we've already completed some early survey work and traffic data collection. We have upcoming geotechnical tests that will study the soil and rock conditions ahead of construction. And in early 2025, we'll design the signal. I get the bulk of the signal design. And then in mid-2025, we'll plan signal operations. The start of construction, again, is the fall of 2025. That's my update, Laura.
Really? Any final questions about the intersection, real estate, or anything else that was covered during the meeting today? Or again, taking time out of your busy day to be here. And I think with that, we can go ahead and show our next step. So we're hoping to schedule one more tag meeting hopefully this year. As Heather mentioned at the beginning, we would like to share an update on where we're at with the cost estimates and then move into the level 3 screening results before we complete the level 3 screening process and the Pell study report into early next year. I think with that, we can go ahead and close out of our meeting. Dave, Hadley, any final words?
No,
just-
just thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, everybody. We really appreciate everybody being here and listening and asking lots of good questions.
Thanks a lot. See you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.